Isn't the rate of CTE higher in American football than it is in rugby?
Probably. I don't know how much they've studied that. That's one that we could take an own goal there.
That's why I asked it as a question.
Hello, and welcome to Expected Own Goals. Orlando keeps on a ticking. Undefeated season. Is it possible? Yeah, probably. I'm your host, Eric Morgan.
I'm Evan Davis. I didn't know that's how you were going to start this. Is that just going to be the new ticking clock every single episode?
Yeah.
Where's Orlando at?
It's just our acknowledgement of something that I think everybody should be paying attention to because it's a pretty remarkable feat if it comes off. And that crowd in Orlando was really good.
The best crowd that they have had at home since 2017.
Yeah, what was the attendance on that game?
I think it was in the neighborhood of 17,000 in a 26,000 seat stadium.
Yeah, so I think as long as Orlando continues to click along and chase this undefeated season, I think we mention it right from the jump because it's exciting and it's something is it a little fluky? Yeah, sure, of course. But also, I'm rooting for it at this point.
Well,
I think it's fun.
It's also the only thing that really makes the Pride's stretch run meaningful because they're not going to drop.
Correct.
They're not going to drop out of the top two, so they're going to play the quarterfinals at home. The Shield doesn't really matter.
Mathematically, they're not going to drop out of the top two is a statement of fact. They're not going to lose the Shield is, I think, probably a more accurate statement, though there is the mathematical possibility that it happens.
My point being that of the things that really matter toward the ultimate goal of winning the trophy, top two is the thing that is going to be emphasized.
For sure.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
They are absolutely going to make the top two. They're going to play the quarterfinals at home. There's no threat to any of that. And they'll set themselves up very nicely to play the semifinal at home as well. So what do they really have to play for at this point? Well, the first ever invincible season in league history is pretty nice.
Yeah, and an invincible season that I think probably would have even been hard to conceive for Orlando fans before the season started.
Oh, is that on your bingo card? Sure as shit wasn't on mine.
No, I mean, we definitely undersold the possibility of Orlando from the beginning, but I think we also had the caveat of the Barber Banda news dropped right after we recorded, or right around when we recorded.
Yeah, I mean, I thought they had a high ceiling, but they also had potentially a low floor. There just felt like there was so much variance going into Orlando's campaign, even with everything that we've come to understand about how good they actually were in 2023 beyond that first month. But yeah, invincible season, just you wouldn't even expect that of San Diego or Portland or any other team that we would consider top rate back in March,
That's exactly right. But I imagine at this point, they've got to be pretty close to stretching to getting the highest points per game total in league history as well.
2018 North Carolina is really tough to overtake because they were just they were so insanely dominant. But I'll double check, see what I can find out.
Yeah, this is interesting.
But I say that more to praise the 2018 North Carolina courage, not to bury the 2024 pride.
Of course. It's also just a different league now.
Yeah. Although the levels of stratification might be closer to 2018 than we would have anticipated as well, because inequality is just at its highest in maybe ever. But let's see. Let me pull up. So you are actually correct. So Orlando right now is sitting on 2.45 points per game.
Yeah, it's impressive.
And 2018 North Carolina was 2.38. So they are on pace to break North Carolina's 2018 record.
That's pretty staggering.
Yeah, the raw points total will get broken regardless because they've got the 2 extra games that North Carolina didn't have. But even controlling for that, they are on pace to be, at least by raw results, the greatest team in league history. And of course for us, things only get better for them because not only is Seb Hines ensuring that Carson Pickett is in the 11, but Carson Pickett's out here scoring goals.
Yeah, let's just start with that game because not a lot to look at and say Orlando, I think, is in any form of trouble. The Dash is, of course, an opponent that everyone should feel so lucky as to face. That said, Carson Pickett scores a brilliant looping header to start that game off. Angelina hits an absolute missile from outside the box. Poor Jane Campbell on both of those goals. Yuki Nagasako gets kind of the best chance of Houston's game and puts that home.
Yeah, it's an excellent chance from like 8 yards out, and it's also an excellent finish.
And then finally, Marta ends the game with her own form of missile. But, you know, after the Dash were never really in that game, after scoring in the 53rd, they created like sub 0.2 XG for the rest of the way until Marta's goal.
Sure, yeah, and like by the time that Ordonez gets that rebound off the Puntingham shot, which is like right in front of goal, they're already losing 3-1, so what does it matter? Like, game state really can determine that, yeah.
That's what I'm getting at, which is to say that there was never a point where Houston looked like they had a leveler in them.
Right.
Once the score went 2-1. So Orlando just rolled on. Other teams doing rolling on. Washington downing poor Angel City.
Yeah.
We were at that game.
We were at that game, and like honestly, the score maybe did flatter Washington a little bit, but the actual goals that they did score did not flatter them at all. They were expected, and such a testament to Washington's depth when they did not have Rodman, they did not have Sarr, obviously they don't have Bethune, and they just they're a machine. They are a true attacking machine.
Washington came in doing like the hobbling offstage James Brown act, you know, and immediately like recovered. And then when Messiah Bright levels the game on what has to be one of the more hilarious finishes I've ever seen, the guy I was sitting next to described it as a pass so good it couldn't be missed. Like,
yeah,
like Messiah Bright, who may or may not have known a ton about that.
I thought
finish.
She did. I mean, from my point of view, she did.
It looked like on replay she was delighted that what happened. She puts herself, regardless, in a great position.
I was going to say, she's in the cutback zone, and the ball was a cutback, you know?
Totally. But it deflects well into the goal, and it looks like Angel City, as they have so many times this year, are in it with a shout, and then they concede on their own corner.
Yeah.
Yikes.
The most embarrassing way to concede a counterattack, I think.
Yeah. It should be said that Rosman Kwasi had just an unbelievable
such a beast
game. Such a beast, but also threads a pretty brilliant pass that I don't think TV quite illustrates the spacing well.
Yes, I agree with that.
How bad the channel was for, like, how tight the channel she had to hit was.
Yeah.
And hits a subbed on McKenna Morris, who dinks the ball, a true striker's finish, right over DD. And everything that Angel City throws at Washington for the rest of the game just kind of isn't enough.
I want to pull up some things that Becky Tweed said in the post-match presser, which are, how to put this? I think we need to somebody needs to do a wellness check on Becky Tweed.
Yeah.
Because first of all, the first quote I'm going to read is one that just suggests delusion. It's, quote, "We have to end it early," meaning gotta not allow late goals the way that they did. "It should never happen. It shouldn't even get to the other end of the field," talking about the corner kick, counterattack. "It has to be something that if you get wrong and you get one miss high up the field, you've got to end it on the halfway line." Well, yeah, that's probably a thing that you should do, but you're speaking about it as though this is an anomaly.
Yeah, that's
this
right.
is just sort of who your team is. And I want to cite some data because we are now at the point where Becky Tweed has coached as many games for Angel City as Freya Coombe did.
Oh boy. I know where this is going, and it's not going to be fun for Becky Tweed.
Coombe earned 38 points from those 33 games. Tweed earned 44.
Okay, could be worse.
Coombe generated 41.1 expected points from those 33 games. Tweed generated 45.2.
Okay.
The win percentage for home games for Coombe, 35%. The winning percentage for home games at under Tweed, 35%.
Okay.
The XG differential per game at home under Coombe, plus 0.1. Under Tweed, negative 0.1.
Yee.
So on the face of it, Tweed's been a little bit better, but she hasn't been that much better.
Like, Evan, I'll tell you, for me, that's a wash.
I agree.
And I understand.
I agree. And that's my point.
And like Freya Coombe has to have had one of what I would describe as one of the most frustrating and futile coaching tenures I've ever seen.
Yeah.
For a team that had such expectation, that team under Freya Coombe was often frustrating or listless or just not a lot to cheer for at times. And I think that the roster under Becky Tweed has at times improved. And I still think, Christ, this is a very mediocre team.
Yeah, I'm not, but I guess what my point is that I come not to praise Coombe or Barry Tweed or vice versa. What I think I'm trying to
just to point it out.
What I'm also think I'm trying to demonstrate here is that the new coach bounce is an illusion. Like the things that Angel City did in the second half of the year, while substantive from a certain point of view, they ultimately got ironed out because the majority of the lineup under Tweed in the second half of 2023 is the lineup in 2024, barring a handful of positions. Yeah. It's mostly the same team. So why are they so much worse than they were in their first go around with Tweed? And well, I think it's just because they are the same players they always were. Like,
yeah, I think also, and Tweed is the same manager she always was,
right?
And I think I think that there was a bit of a mirage. There was the new coach bounce that happened when Becky Tweed took over.
No, I know exactly.
They snuck into the playoffs, but I think, and for parts of last season, played like a playoff team. But when the rest of the league, I think, improved, they held serve and then lost players like Junendo, no fault of their own.
Yeah,
and
then lost players that were their fault.
Yeah, and then they sold players.
I guess
and lost players.
What I'm really getting at is that the effect a coach has on a team's performance, while certainly non-zero, is a lot smaller than maybe you think it is. Because Coombe had a lot of, if not the majority of the same players to work with as Tweed, and they basically have the same record, those two coaches.
Yeah, I think a coach, I've been thinking a lot about the importance of individual coaching and like how we actually analyze that. But in the broad sense, I don't think Becky Tweed has done anything in her time that has dramatically changed the fortunes for better or worse.
Exactly. No, it's exactly my point. Yeah.
I think that is correct. I don't necessarily think that's correct for all coaches, but I think that statement works well for Becky Tweed in this time.
Well, I also think that for the asterisk for all coaches also applies to what we talk about with finishers. Like, it's real outliers who can make really massive difference on the field with their teams.
Yeah, or also you just need something that you never get, which is a coach to end up at several different levels of quality of squad over the course of their career.
Right. And still manage to get the team to perform over and over again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So like I get the sense that like great coaches like Emma Hayes or Pep Guardiola are value adds.
Yeah.
Generally speaking.
Yeah.
That said, I have no idea because they've also had such significant structural advantages.
Right. It's the money.
Like we never get to see Emma Hayes coach Leicester. And frankly, we never get to see Pep Guardiola coach Leicester.
Yeah. No, it's exactly right. It's exactly right. And so how many answers do we really have for either of them in that regard? But the point still stands. There's really no daylight between Angel City under Freya Coombe and Angel City under Becky Tweed.
Yeah.
One more.
Yeah, the sum total effect of that is a not very good Angel City team.
Right. Yeah. The majority of players of which have been here for almost all of that time and have overlap with each coach. Here's the other quote. And this is really where I think Becky Tweed's like hyper positive expressions butt up against her awareness of reality, where someone asked her what positives they could take away from the game. And this is what she said. I think the positives are that we are our own worst enemy. I don't know if that's a positive or not, but I think it feels like a positive because it's something that's in our control. Like, Becky, are you okay?
No, let's just leave it there. I think that says all you need. I don't think there's like a follow-up to that point.
Nope.
That's its own. That's accidentally telling on yourself in a very real way.
Yeah. Yeah. So, once again, we spent way too much time on Angel City.
No, I mean, we didn't spend too much time on Angel City. This is just, I feel like we'll be spending very, very little time on Angel City the rest of the season.
Yeah.
So
if you average out their playoff odds between listener Trevor Larner's ELO model and American Soccer Analysis's projection model, their playoff odds come out to just under 5%. So season's gone.
Yeah, we're at the point where we can start talking about whether these teams are dead or not.
Yeah.
The Houston Dash, dead and have been.
Yep.
Angel City, dead. And if they weren't dead, I mean, they're not dead yet, but we're in zombified mode.
Let's talk about San Diego, Portland, or a team
of teams that are dead.
Despite and despite the results, it doesn't really move the needle on either of them. Like, even though Portland's in a tailspin relative to the rest of the field, they still seem pretty locked in to get a playoff spot. And San Diego, despite the improvements that we've seen in certain parts of the field, they just don't have enough time against weak enough opponents to overcome the points gap that they have right now.
I know that the models really love Portland right now, generally speaking, and I understand why. But on a game-by-game basis, and this is, maybe it's not anti-stat, but they look so bad.
Well, here's the thing. Let's actually,
and without Sophia Smith,
for one thing.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they are the cupboard is bare again. Not trusting the weapons that you have. Your best weapons are injured. But since the return from the Olympic break, like Portland's XG differential is negative 5.4. That's second worst, only ahead of Houston. Like, they are bad and they are tail spinning. But the reason that they are still likely to gain a playoff spot is because everybody else who is on the other side of the playoff line is worse than them with fewer points and time's running out. And we'll get to Louisville in a second and why that really helps Portland as much as it does Bay or any other team sort of like on the cusp here. But like, this is the thing about having an 8-team playoff pool in a 14-team league. Bad teams are going to the dance. They're going to get They're going to get flattened in the first round, but they are going to the dance.
Yeah, I think Portland without Sophia Smith, the rest of the way, is a really bleak team.
But is it bleaker than Louisville and San Diego and Seattle?
I'll say this. They have 3 of their remaining 4 games at home. That's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
They have Utah at home. That is no longer a gimme. They have the Pride at home. Oh boy. They have. How funny would it be if Portland breaks up Orlando's like invincible season?
And listen,
in its like to end its tailspin.
If there is a league for that to occur, it is this one.
It's this one. Yeah. They then have Louisville away. Boy, that is starting to look like a massive 6-point fixture.
Yes.
With 2
maybe
weeks, in week 25. I mean, yeah, it's possible things could shift, but Louisville has that goal differential advantage right now, which I'm starting to wonder how much it will come into play. It is that's the one anxiety point, and we'll get to Bay, that if you're a Bay supporter, you just hate that you have a -7 goal differential right now.
Sure.
If it comes down to a tie, because Portland and Bay, and even Chicago, if we're going to lump them in there, because we probably should, or Portland and Louisville, and Chicago all have better goal differential advantages at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Bay on form will probably do away with some of that goal differential, and that will also come with points. But Portland, and then they have Angel City to close out the season, and those are potential gifts. I don't think Portland's going to miss the playoffs. I'm probably not ELO model confident in them making the playoffs, but I think you're right. For lack of a better team to come in and sweep out, yeah, they are likely there. I mean, do you want to call San Diego dead at this point? San Diego have 4 games remaining. Right. They are 6 points off the top.
Right now,
nobody above them is great.
Right now, their average playoff odds are 5.2%. I think with those odds and with their improving performances, if there were 9 games to go, maybe I'm singing a different tune, but you've got 4 more chances to try and take over Louisville and one other team, whether it's Chicago or Bay or whoever. Like you have to vault 2 teams with your current points total with only 4 games left.
Totally.
That seems
very
impossible.
difficult. That said, they have won their XG battles in the last 3 games. That loss to Chicago is looking critically bad for them.
Mm-hmm.
But I think despite the Snapdragon horror show of a pitch, they put together what I felt was pretty fluid, dynamic, comprehensive victory against Portland.
They played very well. And honestly, that is going to be one of the kind of sad parts of the playoff picture when things are all said and done that I didn't anticipate, which is, San Diego probably deserved to get in after everything that they did to click under Landon Donovan. And boy, what a sentence that is to utter into the world.
I got to tell you, I thought Landon Donovan at best would be a neutral
Me too.
coach. I think he has, if they finish as strong as they have been over these last 3 games, I think he's got a solid shout to be the coach of the team next season.
Again, crazy.
I know it's crazy to say that, but look, we are on this podcast. We come with opinions, but we are not blind to actually what is occurring or the changes. San Diego looked like a legitimate offensive threat against quality defenses and also Chicago.
In the 6 games under Donovan in that time frame, they have the number 5 non-penalty XG generated, and what is that? 1, 3, 5, 7. They have the number 8 non-penalty XG differential. Their defense is still underwater; it's still below average, but they're making up for it with what they're doing in attack. And you could say that it's just because of Delphine Cascarino. That is a big part of it. Maybe the biggest part of it. But the ways in which that he is filling the number 9 in Alex Morgan's absence between Maya Jones and Amira Ali, I think have been really intelligent. They look a lot more fluid. And the other part is they have not had Jaden Shaw available to start a game yet.
Yeah, look, if you were going to ask me of these teams, the Red Stars, the Thorns, Bay, Louisville, and San Diego, if you were to ask me of those teams, who do you think is likeliest to just rip a 4-game win streak? My first answer would be none of them. My second answer would be Bay. And my third answer would be San Diego right now.
Yeah. I mean, San Diego does have to play Kansas City in this stretch run. So that will be a problem. But North Carolina and Louisville.
My first answer is none of them.
Yeah. But they can beat North Carolina and Louisville.
Yeah, I think that's right.
No doubt.
All right. I feel like we've pushed another nail into the Portland coffin and tried to exhume another nail from the San Diego coffin.
I'm sorry, but it's not good. I gotta lay a big bright line under here because everybody else is worse. They are not gonna. Their final nail isn't going in until the end of the quarterfinals. And if for whatever reason Portland doesn't make the playoffs, you will cut this audio and put it as the stinger for that episode, and we will make fun of me. I will take it. I will happily.
I will stand by that. I will say what I will say is my view on this is a 90% plus certainty that Portland makes the playoffs feels high to me intuitively, and yet I still expect them to make the playoffs.
I don't know what to tell you. I mean, two different models are giving them that number, again, because everything is relative. Nothing's absolute.
Absolutely true. All right, let's move on.
Yeah, let's talk about Chicago, North Carolina.
Wow, the rare result where Chicago
deserved it.
Do more than enough to win.
Yeah, and they didn't get it. Yeah.
If we were talking about the fickle creature that is this game is a great example of that. North Carolina scored some worldies. They, again, fail to impress. I think their road form is fluky.
I do too. I don't think that's really meaningful of anything.
Yeah, I think it's just indicative of a team that isn't very good, or indicative of a team that's very mid-table, and that is who they are.
Yeah, they are part of the big mid-table mishmash that includes Bay, Louisville, Portland, Seattle. Weirdly enough, yeah, there's not a lot of daylight.
Yeah. On the other hand, they are almost certainly locked in.
100%
to a playoff spot.
100% chance. I mean, they're on 35 points, and ninth place is on 25 points right now. So
they are not mathematically locked in, but they are locked in.
Yeah, they need 2 more points. They need a win or 2 draws, and they're in.
In this game, this game is really not particularly attractive as a watch until Denise O'Sullivan hits just a beaut from outside the box to open it up. And from there, Chicago have a lot of Chicago-style big chances. They don't score any of them.
Yeah. Their one goal coming from a fluky Ludmilla goal, which admittedly was a very pretty finish.
Yeah, it was some just Brazilian magic checking in. It was unbelievable as a finish itself. But this game, you have the own goal. You have the Kari Recaro own goal.
The one thing that I will say, and thank you for reminding me because I did want to bring this up, that yes, it's officially counted as an own goal, and which also means that no XG value is generated for it. But given where that ball is shot from, and given the fact that it is a cutback that Pinto is trying to latch onto, and essentially the whole move sort of forces an own goal from Recaro.
That's right.
So I think that XG maybe isn't being super kind to North Carolina because of that particular chance, and would then maybe make one think that the game was a little bit more even than the XG split would suggest.
Yeah. Again, it was another one of those performances where you just aren't overwhelmingly convinced by North Carolina. And by the same token, you aren't convinced particularly much by Chicago. This doesn't feel like either team is competing for a title. I thought Alyssa Nair was pretty badly out of position on Caroline's finish. Caroline puts that ball pretty central, and Alyssa Nair is just way too near post and sort of dives over it. Great to see Caroline back on the scoreboard.
Yeah.
Not that Alyssa Nair caused this loss in any kind of way, but just little things here and there from both teams that are not what you expect to see or want to see from teams that plan on challenging for much of anything.
Yeah, and FBref's post-shot model would indicate that given where the ball crossed the goal mouth, it's probably more savable than not.
Yeah. And then, Ludmilla scores just a worldie.
Yeah.
She looks like a real hit. That's, I think, exciting for Chicago, if not this season, for next season. Chicago, what are their playoff odds right now?
88% or 83% if you average the two models together.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think it's going to matter that much.
No. So here's a game that did matter very much, and which connects why projections are more certain about Portland than they are otherwise. Louisville got their ass kicked by Utah.
Yeah, Utah, again.
I was shocked by this game.
We're doing Bay today, but we could have done an episode on what changed in Utah. And I think that that would be appropriate as well. That said, they absolutely dominated.
And it wasn't like they were playing a weakened side. Beviana has rolled out what probably should be the starting 11 right now at this point in time. All of her main weapons were there.
Utah had a lot of really good chances. Poor Hannah Betfort, who remains snake bitten, maybe just
ever since that very first day in mid-March.
Yeah, she squanders another's. Per FBref, she's generated almost 5 XG with no goals on the season.
Yeah.
Yikes. And squanders another. But Utah was just sort of a barrage.
They controlled the game. They had more shots in the box. They had more touches in the box. They had more completed passes in the attacking third. They were the better team, basically, from the first whistle until the last. Louisville had like a couple of good looks, and they were good looks, but they gave a lot of that value back later on. And while Ana Tejada's goal doesn't necessarily come from like a massive chance.
No, it does not. The 28-yard screamer.
And it's against the run of play because Louisville had sort of been in control for 15, 20 minutes before that. You really can't say that Louisville deserved it. Even if you believe the XG more than the G+, I think Louisville really, really can't say that they deserved it here.
I mean, you have... Yeah, I think this is one of my favorite examples of like the fluky nature of this sport, because you have Katie Lund out of her box stopping Cameron Tucker on just a massive one-on-one chance, and Lund like a panther off that line to anticipate and save that. That is one of the saves of the season. Yeah, right there. And then
completely biffs it.
And then 10 minutes later, succumbs to. Granted, I don't think any keeper in this league is saving that Ana Tejada shot, because it is through a lot of traffic, hard to see, and just rocketing toward the corner. But it's Utah misses a gimme and then scores a fluky missile from distance, and that's all it really takes for Utah in this game. Yeah, Louisville, holy shit, how bad is this for them?
It's bad. I mean, I think their playoff odds after that win last week were around 45%, which put them in the hunt legitimately. They're down to 27, almost about 27% now.
Yeah, it's bad.
It's not nothing. You can't say that the season's over, but they've got a hill to climb now, and it's hard for me to see how they surmount it. And because of that, that means Portland and Chicago can feel much more secure in this expanded playoff pool that we're dealing with this year and next year. Sandra Herrera of CBS Sports put it perfectly. She posted a meme on Twitter saying, thinking about how the NWSL convinced us to care about 6th, 7th, and 8th place. And then it's a photo of Mudang looking at the camera, and someone's photoshopped Mudang holding 2 guns in the camera's face. Like, it sucks that we have to give Portland a pass when they don't deserve a pass. Like, I don't want to say that Portland is still a playoff lock, because it is pathetic what they've been doing since they came back from the Olympic break. But that's the world we live in, sadly, with this format until we get expansion in 2026.
Yep. That is correct.
One note on Utah. I know that there's plenty of temptation to like start singing the praises of Jimmy Coenraitz, but like, of the 7 games that he has had in charge, they've still only won the XG battle twice.
From where they were?
Sure. A lot of games are a lot closer than they used to be. When they lose the XG battle, the scoreline is not so severe.
They are just, and you saw it against Louisville, they are generating offensive movement that they were not generating under Amy Rodriguez.
Yeah.
And they are playing what feels like you can see a vision for what this team would like to be, at least under Jimmy Coenraitz. Moving on, let's talk what should have been a bigger deal match than it was, but that's just the way Gotham sometimes make matches feel. Gotham, Kansas City. First off, gotta own an own goal for both of us. We had, on one of our podcasts, we have Kansas City spelled Canna City.
Oh, we did. Yeah, that's my fault. I missed that typo.
It's also my fault. I didn't catch it.
Yeah, I wrote it. You were
double own
the
goal.
way that our process works is I write the copy, and then if you're editing, you edit the copy as you're posting the episode.
Correct.
So yeah, we both made a boo boo.
We both biffed that one. Yeah. So Canna City, Canna City no longer.
Canna City. Canna City drew 1-1 with Gotham at California Pizza Kitchen Stadium.
And How did you feel about that first Gotham goal?
The Cook OG?
Yeah, because it's a byproduct of referee interference.
Well,
and all of the Kansas City players are freaking out.
Here's the thing. I Zapruder filmed that section of the game. So Cooper.
So back into the left.
Yeah, it's all back into the left. That is one magic loogie. Michelle Cooper runs into Katya Koroleva on the Gotham left, KC right side. That's where a lot of the players who are like locking up and protesting the lack of a dead ball. That's a lot where a lot of them are living. So fast forward to the goal, and Yasmin
Just like 20 seconds later, but part of the same attack.
Yasmin Ryan beats DiBernardo to the end line and then hits what probably was intended to be a cutback, but the angle was really, really tight. And then Cook ends up hitting a deflection and sending it into the goal. The quote unquote defensive switch off that people are claiming occurred after the Koroleva incident did not, in my opinion, lead to the goal.
Did not happen.
It did not lead to the goal. For one thing, whether or not it happened is actually a matter of conjecture too, because there's this really great moment where Lola Bonta is screaming at Koroleva, and Cook, who is ultimately responsible, quote unquote, for the own goal, is the one who is staying switched on and actually steps up and pushes LaBonta in the back, basically to tell her to shut the fuck up and get focused. And for another thing, the side where all of this is occurring is not where the attack and the goal inevitably occurs. If there is a place where you could potentially argue the switch off after the Koroleva incident could have created this moment, this defensive lapse, which leads to an incredibly dangerous Gotham attack, you could say that the pass to Lavelle is where it happens because Lavelle's is left on an island in completely open space. But the thing is, you look at a freeze frame of when the pass is released. The back line is flat and covering all of the attacking pieces, including Ryan, by the way. The reason that Lavelle is in open space is because Vanessa DiBernardo is pulled deep and is sort of caught in between this place where she has to keep an eye on Ryan, who's hugging the touchline, and Lavelle, who's in the wide pocket. So DiBernardo makes a choice when the pass comes in to step toward Lavelle. Pretty reasonable choice to make, if you ask me, given who Rose Lavelle is when she's got the ball at her feet in open space. It's a gamble, but it was probably a gamble worth taking. And DiBernardo, by the way, is not one of the players who like stops in her tracks to yell about the Koroleva thing. She's staying involved in the play. So Lavelle dekes her feints left and then drags the ball onto her right foot to make the pass over to Ryan. And that's when the space opens up for Ryan to make the run end line because DiBernardo's now behind the play.
Mm-hmm.
Lavelle does that to the best of people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that is just, that's a hat tip fair play moment. The thing that actually ultimately causes the goal, in my opinion, is that Almut Schultz and Alana Cook miscommunicate about who is responsible for handling the Ryan cutback. Because Schultz is setting herself up to just collect the ball as it comes in, which it would have done if Cook doesn't step into the way. But because Cook steps into the way, they're all of a sudden like butt to face. They are like colliding into each other, and that causes the deflection. And then Schultz can't make a play on the ball, and that's when it dribbles in. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's not the Koroleva incident. It's that Schultz and Cook were not communicating in that moment. That causes the own goal.
And also credit to Yasmin Ryan for hitting a cross so terrible that it froze.
Right. Yeah.
That it froze both Cook and Schultz.
Yep. Exactly.
I mean, it hits the inside of Alana Cook's goal-facing arm.
Right.
It is a cross to literally no one.
Right.
and it pinballs in.
Yeah.
It takes that nice snooker bumper hit in It was a disaster. But Kansas City recover.
It was very much a Kansas City at the beginning of the season kind of performance, where they were really letting Gotham come onto them early, and then they just stopped. Or it's that inverse, because in the beginning of the season they would jump down your throat and then back off for a lot of the game. So, but it's still that
rest and pounce.
Yeah, but it's still that division where they really didn't seem all that locked in, barring like maybe one or two moments early, and then in the second half they ran the show, which of course involves Chewinga's goal. That's another countdown that we should be monitoring in addition to Orlando's Invincibles, is Chewinga getting to the single season goal record, which I hope she needs 2 goals to do it. I hope she bags a brace next week, so it will have been done in the same amount of possible games as Kerr did it, so that we don't have any weird asterisks that can be slapped onto the record. But yeah,
her 17th is one of her best.
Yeah, it's just a classic Chewinga goal.
Yeah, it's just another ball over the top. Temwa Chewinga with pace, and Temwa Chewinga with so much pace that even best keeper in the league statistically this season, and Katrin Berger, stands no frickin' chance.
Well, it's just amazing to watch.
Just rounds her.
The run to create space obviously has, you could write a Russian novel about like all of the layers that are packed into it. But then when she does spring free, it's sadly funny, the face and the body language that Neely Martin is making, because it is the like, I'm never going to catch her, but I have to put in the effort, or put in the visible efforts that I'm trying to. And then the way in which Chewinga knows when to slow down to make Berger bite and come out, and then to not even have to take like some insane, Jogo Bonito touch. She just allows the ball, because she's so balanced and she's so controlled with everything that she's doing. She just lets the ball like float across Berger's path once she has committed, and then she can accelerate again to get around her and score an open net. It's incredible.
Yeah, and then she turns on the afterburners like in a drag race.
Yeah.
And she just hits the knocks button.
She is, she's fucking, name whatever musical prodigy you wish to name. She is as in control of her instrument as I have ever seen a player be.
That is the chance of the game. It is not as if the Current don't have other chances on down the stretch. Chewinga is integral in so much of what works for them. But this is a game between, it's a draw between two playoff teams that are jockeying for that second home path to the title.
Mm-hmm.
More crucial for Kansas City because they host the title. So not leaving home for the playoffs is a real boon to just the lifestyle experience of playing. but yeah, Kansas City stands now at the bottom of that pack, and we're unable to make up ground with 4 games to go on 2 teams I think that they are probably marginally better than in Gotham and the Spirit.
Yeah,
but
they're more.
Gotham, this is fine.
They're more than marginally better than. They're much better than.
Yeah, they're better.
But that doesn't necessarily mean anything when we get down to actual results. But they are a much better team. And they thoroughly dominated Gotham, but for one mistake between a keeper and a center back. What can you do?
Yeah, which is going to happen from time to time. Let's get to Bay, Seattle. And let's get Seattle out of the way, because we are not here to talk about everything that has gone wrong in Seattle and continues to go wrong.
We've talked about it a lot already.
Exactly. We're not here to rehash things that are just as true as they have been for long stretches of this season.
But very quickly, Seattle, they didn't score any goals. They generated 0.6 XG in total on the day, only 0.05 XG per shot. They hit the exact league average number of shots in the box, the exact league average number of touches in the box. And the best that you can say is that it remained a fairly open game that went back and forth in the center of the park. No one really could get their foot on the ball in dangerous areas for any consistent periods of time. So, cool. Great. That just means you're the most boring team in the league.
Yeah, and to say nothing of the fact that from the minute they conceded the penalty, and that is as clear a penalty as you will ever see.
Yeah.
It is a last-ditch tackle from Phoebe McLaren that gets all human.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were going to get ball, you had to go through a lot of human to get there. Completely ill-advised. And then dispatched by Oshuala. Claudia Dickey dives just a hair early and Oshuala just passes it into the net. Seattle created almost nothing until second half stoppage time from there.
Yeah.
Despite knowing that they needed a win against a Bay team who they continued to let have opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Like Kundanachi has a great chance in the 36th. She just underhits it. Kundanachi has another great chance in the 57th. She just misses.
She really biffs. Yeah, she biffs the shot. But it's an incredible chance.
And Seattle they don't create anything of value kinda at all for the entire rest of the game until we're in stoppage time.
Yeah.
And it's like they woke up and found some urgency, and then they can't create a high quality chance out of it.
Yeah.
It's just so sad.
It really, really is. Leslie Gallimore recently did an interview, maybe I've mentioned it on the show before, that you could tell that she really wants to say that it's all the budgeting uncertainty around the Carlisle group buying the team and that not closing for a long time. But she can't bring herself to say it because she wants to do the tough guy, no excuses thing. But we knew this was coming, maybe not to the level of severity that it was, but like this has been writing on the wall for maybe even a year and a half, because Laura Harvey has just been less and less and less interested in developing any kind of cohesive attack. And now we're at that stage where you're just throwing darts at the wall, blindfolded. Like, oh, Anna Maria Crnogorcevic, maybe that'll work. Narilia Mondesir, maybe that'll work. Getting rid of Bethany Balser, maybe that'll work. Whatever. Ji So-yeon, old lady Ji So-yeon, maybe that'll work. And none of it was ever going to work. We certainly didn't think it was going to be this pathetic, but it was never going to work.
No, and they fooled us. They fooled us into thinking it was possible that they weren't the team that they've been all season. And now they are more the team they've been all season.
You're very sweet, but you can just say me. They fooled me.
They fooled us. They fooled you. It's
fine.
But it happens. And they are dead.
Like maybe the final thing that can really underscore that, and that'll help segue us to Bay, is that yes, like Bay all of a sudden looked a little shaky at the back in second half stoppage time, and they let a couple of good chances, half decent chances slip through. But also after one of those chances, they turned around in transition, and but for an incredible last ditch tackle, Oshuala was through on goal in the fifth minute of second half stoppage time, and in a no doubter chance. That's how quickly the tables can turn, and how little Seattle could put any kind of control on the proceedings offensively or defensively. And barring 2, maybe 3 moments, I know a lot of Bay fans were feeling very dissolute about the performance overall, irrespective of the result, but there was a lot of really good work in just trying to kill the clock in the last few minutes, which is something that Bay didn't really do in the first half of the season. And maybe that's a good segue to try and explain what we're really doing here on this episode is, and because we've talked about it a little bit, not super in depth the last few weeks, but we're really going to drill down today on how are Bay doing this? How did they turn their season around here?
Yeah, and Bay is good. Bay is potentially really dangerous, and you're just not going to play pretty games against the Reign. The Reign don't allow it.
Yeah.
But what you can play is ugly games where you create a lot more than the Reign. And that was the game that I watched. I can understand the frustration. Let's talk about our once hype beast turned blush, turned once again hype beast, Bay FC, who are great. Evan, what do you think is the most essential part of Bay's resurgence, emergence, however you want to describe it?
Well, I think it's clear, and again, we have discussed it at various points over the last 3 episodes or so, is they figured their shit out defensively. And Albertin Montoya gave an interview after the game to television, U.S. television, and he said something that I think maybe I shouldn't have been so surprised given what we had actually been seeing on the field. But he said, like, yeah, maybe at the beginning of the season, I was like really excited for us to play like beautiful, expansive football. But you got to realize that like the 3 points are important, and maybe you have to like back off and like teach your team a little bit of control and have them learn how to work together to try and control games. And that in the aggregate has been exactly what they have done. So the league average XG allowed per game at the team level is 1.3. On average, in a game, a team concedes 1.3 XG this season in the NWSL. In the first 11 games of the year, so up to this point, that being the first half of Bay's season, in those 11 games, they conceded 1.3 XG or less, non-penalty XG or less, only 3 times. That's for a 27% rate of beating the league average on XG allowed. In the second half, in the 11 games that they've played since, they have done that 10 times for a 91% rate. It is a completely different level of defensive production in the second half of the year. And it is interesting to note that the second half of the year up to now, Game 12 was their demolishing of Chicago at Wrigley Field on June 8th. Which is their most convincing results of the season. And it is the moment when Savvy King lost her starting place. She started a couple games after that before the U20 World Cup, but she was no longer the in-ink starting left back from that point on. And from that point on, their defense has looked a lot better. 2 weeks after that, June 22nd, that's the first game where we get the Kiara Pickett, Dorian Bailey, Tess Bodie midfield. Dana Castellanos is out. Joelle Anderson is now out for good. Bodie is now locked in, not as an 8, not as a winger, but as a number 10. That's the midfield trio. Those have resulted in the best run of defensive form that Bay has had all year. The one time where they conceded more than the league average in XG was the one game in that run where Dana Castellanos started. Oh. And then immediately after she was benched again, that number goes back down. It's a question that... yeah, go ahead.
You hate to put it on the doorstep of 2 players.
And I don't. I put it at the doorstep of many more players than that.
Yeah, but if you were asking who 2 of the biggest problems were, you really can chart this
they were the 2
on
biggest.
Savvy King losing her starting position and Dana Castellanos losing her starting position. Mm-hmm. And those are 2 players that came into this season.
A lot of hype.
With a lot of hype.
A lot of hype that we helped generate, to be fair.
Totally. Big own goal.
Yeah.
And Savvy King, number 2 draft pick, looks like the real deal. In fact, is constantly targeted and beat, and is not learning on the job as a rookie in the way you'd like. A solid candidate for why the draft isn't that helpful for teams, in addition to players, is Savvy King comes in with a lot of hype that maybe wasn't deserved, gets absolutely torched by the league, loses her job, and now maybe the more damning argument is the team is just much better without her.
Yeah, I think it's a systematic issue too that thankfully will not be revisited going forward, because when you compare the NWSL to the WNBA, for example, which has far fewer roster spots to go around in their current 12-team iteration, it's really hard for rookies to break in, even ones that are picked fairly high in the first round. The reason that Rakia Jackson got so much playing time with the Los Angeles Sparks is because the Sparks were bad, and they were planning to be bad. But on good teams, like Kate Martin was the 6th player occasional starter at the beginning of the Las Vegas Aces season, but that's only because Chelsea Gray got hurt. The moment Chelsea Gray comes back into the starting 5, you really don't see much of Martin except in the final few minutes of garbage time when the Aces are blowing somebody else out. But it's not that way in the NWSL with so many more roster spots and in an expansion year where there are maybe some teams who are desperate to fill those spots with any player of quality. And King, being the number 2 overall pick, all of a sudden has a lot of pressure put on her that maybe in a different environment, she would not be the starting left back and she would be allowed to develop and kind of come into her own eventually. Obviously, that's no guarantee either, but she had to jump into the ocean head first and didn't really know how to swim yet.
It seemed like the number 2 overall draft pick was a way for Bay to say, okay, well, we have left backs sorted. As opposed to
going back out into the market. Yeah.
As opposed to saying, we have this really interesting player that we can bet in and create for the future with.
Right.
And that is a problem.
Yeah.
The same deal with Dana Castellanos, who comes with a lot of hype, but has not played in the NWSL and was coming off the back of like some lost season. Like a lost season at Man City.
Yeah, completely lost. And maybe we did not give that fact as much weight as we should have.
And again, it's like, why all the people who love college soccer are going to hate us for this. But it's like, maybe this is why the NCAA and its 4-month schedule is not the best way to find players who just spark at that level.
And Castellanos was able to build some professional reputation because she played in Spain before she was transferred to Manchester. So it's just a lower level of competition.
Yeah, and both of them coming in, one a big profile draft pick and one a high profile transfer, get longer leashes because there is expectation set around them.
Yeah.
And there was plenty of evidence, and maybe credit to Montoya, that it only took him half a season to get both of them effectively out of there. And that people had basically pointed out, I am sure he is getting notes from on high that are saying, like, you got to take a look at how bad they have been individually. And their 2 substitutions, again, lots of other things have to happen. Scarlett Camberos leaves the team. Joel Anderson hits the bench. That said, what they've been replaced with are much less heralded pieces that make a lot more sense together.
Yeah, there's a real chicken or the egg question that comes into the midfield. Was it the tactics that changed and then led to the personnel that came in, or was it the personnel that came in that gave Montoya the opportunity to change the tactics? I'm not totally sure I know the answer to that chain of causation. I personally feel like it leans a little bit more toward the latter, that it was the personnel that he felt needed to change before he could reimagine how they played tactically. Because while Kiara Pickett starts becoming a major component to the midfield fairly early in the season, it's not the balance that and it's the same thing with Tess Bodie. He doesn't find the balance until he decides that it's got to be Pickett, Bailey, and Bodie together as a unit with using a double pivot, which he wasn't doing before. And, Alex Loera before her ACL was kind of expected to be a single pivot to give the top of the midfield triangle more attacking responsibilities. And Dorian Bailey comes in and out of the side in the first half of the year. Joelle Anderson is moved around. Is she an 8? Is she further back in a 6? When you lose Loera, that's more pressure on Anderson to do that. Pickett comes in to try and help shore things up, but he still hasn't committed to the idea that he needs 2 midfielders at that base, both to shield the center backs and also to create multiple progression options to either wing, which is more difficult to do when you're only using one player at the base of midfield. So when he finds Pickett, Bailey, and Bodie together, players that he has become pretty familiar with all year and has played a fair amount all year, when he finally realizes at the end of June that it should be the 3 of them, that's when things stabilize. And that's when it starts to, it suddenly becomes clear to him, it's like, no, I have to play with a 2. I cannot play with a 1 in the center of the park.
Yeah. And credit to him for even coming to that conclusion. losing Alex Loera, any team would be hard pressed losing their their single pivot, like that.
Who is such a two-way threat?
Yeah, who is such a two-way threat. Who was, I think, meant to be the engine room, and frankly, meant to do a fair amount of the running. That I think the vision was to allow Castellanos to be liberated from, and Castellanos is probably a victim just as much of Alex Loera not being there as she is of her own shortcomings.
The one thing I will say, though, is that in the handful of games we do have before Loera blows her knee out, they're pretty terrible.
Yeah, but yes, that is true. And she also misses a game for mysterious reasons. That said, this less glamorous, less sexy, much more functional midfield has corrected to something I think we were both crying out for a long time, which is you have these extraordinary talents up top that aren't the problem. You are creating a fair amount. Asi Sadashwala remains pretty service dependent, but now there is service there. And Rachel Kundananji continues to just be one of the more interesting menaces in the league, who I think is going a little under the radar at this point.
Yeah, and wouldn't be, if it weren't for Banda and Chewinga, she wouldn't be. It's just that they are so dominant that it washes everything else out.
But they are doing the thing where they're doing the Bill Shankly thing. They have, they have the 8 players that are now carrying the team. And just doing the hard work of lifting the piano. And they have the 3 players who can play the fucking thing. And that combination has made them, over these past couple of games, particularly over this last half season, really dangerous.
Yeah.
And their upward trajectory, particularly post-Olympics, continues at pace. And kind of with do you see chinks in the armor?
Well, I don't know what Montoya's plan is to reintegrate Savvy King once she is back with the team, which will probably be next week. In his mind, is she just going to continue as a bench piece? Because after she's benched on June 8th, she still gets a couple of starts mixed in there, which suggests to me that that was still in a window of experimentation for him, where he was trying to figure out what lineup actually might work the best. I would, to be charitable toward Montoya, you would say he's smart enough to recognize that if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and right now it ain't broke. So maybe King stays benched. I think the things that we are not discussing, because I think they're more cosmetic, albeit they are still important, is Penelope Hawking and Abby Dahlkemper coming in, which does help close other gaps, both offensively and defensively, that may have existed before. It's not just, I think what is so surprising to me is not just that Montoya hit the reset button in the middle of the year, it's the players he replaced those former players with. Bailey maybe a bit less so, because he had been working Bailey in a lot. Same thing with Bodie. He was getting a better sense of who those players are. But Alyssa Mallinson at left back was not the card I would have thought he would play to take care of outside back when King just became unplayable. And Mallinson, for someone who was barely hanging on to roster spots over the last couple of years after she left college, is putting up a .05 net G plus above positional average per 96 minutes, which is excellent for a fullback, especially for one with as little experience as her. She's been great.
Yep.
And that means that right wingers, right-sided attacking midfielders, and right backs cannot run riot on that wing anymore. And that forces them to go to other areas of the pitch where they might feel less comfortable. It's such a huge change.
Yeah, moreover, Mallinson's been a crucial part of not only shutting down that flank for opposing offenses, but as an outlet
yes,
to play to
Without a doubt.
for Bay
Yes.
and create width, because they often are not playing with a left winger who is sticking wide.
Yeah, and before Penelope Hawking's arrival, that was really significant because your point was really true. Rachel Hill was not going to be that player. When you have Kundananji on the left, she's always wanting to cut inside. So using Mallinson as that tool helps get Oshuala the service that we're talking about. It gives you another kind of passing combination opportunity with Kundananji when she's drifted over there. It's going to be a little bit different, I think, now with Penelope Hawking in the 11. It's going to be better because Hawking is better than Rachel Hill. But yeah, I think you're very right to point out that Mallinson has been a linchpin on both sides of the ball as they have sort of weathered this storm until they get this, maybe wouldn't say a death lineup, even though we're talking about Bay Area sports, but like it's as close to a death lineup as Bay FC is going to get.
Yeah. And Dahlkemper has been excellent.
She's been outstanding. Yeah, but that's what you expect.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just all these areas. Like, I think like that one center back position, left wing, the right central midfield combination, and left back were all of these places where they were really, really hurting. And when they chose Mallinson, Bailey, Kiara Pickett, Rachel Hill, and then eventually Penelope Hawking and Abby Dahlkemper, it's a lineup that finally starts to make sense. It finally starts to feel balanced in a way where, like, from top to bottom, it was all gas, no brakes, and that meant they were going over a lot of cliffs. Now there's guardrails there, and Hawking only makes it better. Also, low-key, making the choice for Katie Rowland to be the one rather than Lisanne Pruel, I think is really, really important. Because as much fun as Lisanne Pruel was at the beginning of the year, because she played like a banshee, she then opened them up to a lot of mistakes. And so she split time with Rowland in the first half of the year, but the games where she played, once the backline got beaten, they were really fucked. And Rowland is just a steadier presence back there because she has history and was once the number one on one of the best teams in the league back with the Courage in the old days. So she knows what she's doing, even if her athleticism is slightly taking a step back. When you put all of these things in combination, they're a real team now, and they were not a real team 3 months ago.
If you want a chicken or egg, the Lisanne Pruel era as goalkeeper, about whether Lisanne Pruel was bad because Bay FC's defense was bad and therefore she was a victim of very bad defense, or if she was a contributing factor to how bad the defense was. I don't. Katie Rowland has been an improvement, and I don't care whether it was Lisanne Pruel being bad or not.
Sure.
Moving forward, Bay FC in our averaged models.
Before we move on, I really just want to quickly say that this game was boring. I don't think it's really much of an argument that this game was pretty boring.
Yeah, it was bad.
But the reason, and in times past, we have deliberately either avoided or added to our slate when a boring game we've been faced with a boring game. But I think the fact that this game was boring is the point. Because Bay would not, even against as anemic an attack as Seattle, if this game was being played in May rather than the end of September, Bay would have found ways to really make it not boring and not to their benefit.
I think we can actually go all the way back to our preview and credit Kieran a little bit with wondering why this team wanted to play an expansive, beautiful possession style when instead they could just play like a low block, mid block 4-4-2 and hit and hoof the ball to their two best attacking weapons.
Well, they're still not doing that.
No, of course they're not doing that, but he was on to something about function over beauty.
Yes.
And that this team has gone from its idealized self to a much more functional team that is capable of winning boring fixtures against teams that want to stifle them.
If I have anything in my heart to give to Albertin Montoya, it is simply that I applaud him for pivoting and being nimble enough and flexible enough. And whether that was his decision or if that was the front office's decision, telling him to cut the shit, I don't know. But they did it, and they demonstrated that they could be flexible in the face of a worse plan that had been plan A. So much credit to them. And
That's right.
Your point last week, which I kind of commented on about, they now feel like the team you don't want to face in the playoffs to you. That was another thing that Montoya said in his comments after the game to television. He's like, we have now built ourselves to be a team you do not want to face in a single game knockout. And you look at him and you kind of think, with the way that Kundananji can spring a counterpress, I mean, that chance in the 36th minute comes entirely from her just bullying McLernon off the ball. And the only thing that keeps it from being scored is Dickey being heads up and stopping the shot. If you have that in place with a couple of central midfielders and a couple of center backs who will not give you good areas to play through, yeah, maybe you are a team you do not want to face come playoff time.
Yeah, and that is what I was getting at.
Yeah, no, I know you were. It's just, it's always funny how things have shifted, and like the team is very clearly thinking. You are picking up without necessarily hearing from the team themselves. You were picking up what is in the team's mind right now about what they are trying to be.
Yeah, not just that. It's, for me, I think the other thing, and why I was high on them and why I had them number 2 as likeliest to make the playoffs, is they have taken out net negatives from their team as individuals, and they have replaced them with net positives. And teams are the assemblage of players who offer you various things that are good or bad on a field. And if you take out the pieces that don't work and replace them with things that are not necessarily even good, just better than the pieces that weren't working, you are going to improve as a team.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been doing that consistently enough for a while, without costing much in terms of what they're able to create in attack.
No.
By improving what they are in defense. So there was kind of no room for them but to improve.
Yeah.
And improve they have.
Yeah.
Talent-wise, we felt like Bay was underperforming for long sections of this season. Talent-wise, maybe we overestimated their talent early on. The loss of Alex Loera is huge. I would say we both missed on Savvy King and Dana Castellanos. That said, this team feels more talented, particularly if no Soph Smith, than Portland right now, and starting to inch their way toward that like North Carolina space. Are they a top 4 team?
Well,
no, probably not.
I'll tell you this
on talent, but they're playing like one.
I'll tell you this much: since the June 8th turnaround in these past 11 games, they have the number 3 non-penalty XG allowed per game number behind only Gotham and Kansas City, and they have the number 3 overall non-penalty XG differential behind only Kansas City and Orlando. They have played like a top 4 team up to now since that June 8th game against Chicago.
The nice thing is, and this is the right week for us to be doing this, because we're about to learn a lot more about Bay, because they actually have a really hard schedule to close this out.
Very hard. They
go away to Gotham. We'll learn a lot. Mm-hmm. I suspect that game will be a dreadful watch.
Yes. Sorry to say.
Suffer ball versus stifle ball. Mm-hmm. Classic. No, I mean, that'll be a tough watch. Followed by a home game against the Current. Very challenging. The Courage at home, not a gimme, but very much the mid-table team to play. And then closing away at the Dash. They are currently 87% per our models, 87.5%
to make the playoffs.
Yes. Do you right now think they are a playoff team?
Yeah, I do.
Given their upcoming schedule?
I do. I think it's going to be hard. They've got to basically take 9 points from the next 4 games in order to be assured of a playoff spot based on what the table looks like right now. Obviously, things will shift. But you set Gotham away to the side for a minute, and all of those games feel winnable to me, don't you? Maybe they don't win them.
I mean, not the Current at home, or not the Current at home. That doesn't feel particularly winnable to me.
All right, I'm sorry, I misheard you.
Yeah, they have the Gotham, the Current, Courage, the Dash.
Yep. Okay, so
this is what I'm getting at. Like, it's a tough
run-in, but again, it's all relative, right? Like, who are the other teams around them, and what are their schedules like? Like, we're talking about 8 teams here. So all they got to be is better than Louisville and San Diego. I think they're better than Louisville and San Diego in the stretch run here.
Yeah, I think Louisville, who are down 3 points but have the goal differential advantage right now. Louisville play. They have the Current at home, the Spirit away, the Thorns at home, the Wave away.
That's fucking brutal.
That is not easier. That is not easier.
No. And I don't think I'm just less convinced. Again, like people who don't like playoff projection models, like the ones we're talking about, tend to just assume you pull these numbers out of thin air. You don't. Like, you look at the actual qualities of the teams up to that point in the season, and then you look at the qualities of the teams they have to play for the rest of the season, but you don't stop there. You then take those two facts, and then you simulate the games that each team has to play thousands of times to find what the average result is going to be. And then you transmute that into probabilities for crossing that line. And again, the line is so low because it's an 8-team pool that...
Yeah, and the reason... Yeah, exactly. That's right. And the reason that the Chicago Red Stars, who are above the Thorns and Bay in the table by a point and have a better goal differential than Bay, the reason that they are below on the likelihood of making the playoffs...
But not by much, but they are lower, yes.
But not by much, is because they aren't very good. And despite the fact that they play the Dash away on Friday, fine. But they close out with Gotham at home, the Spirit away, and the Current at home.
Yeah, brutal.
God bless them if they need any points out of those last 3 fixtures to make the playoffs.
The only thing that is keeping them above 80% playoff odds is because they have all the points that they have.
Is the points on the board, and now their goal differential advantage, which I suspect will not look as good as it does right now come the end of the season.
That's
with
right.
Those final 3 fixtures.
That's right. So yes, right. I believe Bay is in the catbird seat, despite the goal differential issues, despite however anemic you thought their attack was against Seattle, which I don't think really matters in the grand scheme. This is the question. Are you better, and can you be better than Louisville, San Diego, Angel City, and Seattle? And I think the answer is pretty conclusively yes for Portland, Bay, and Chicago.
Yep.
That's it.
All right. Let's talk what we're going to watch next weekend. What you want to break down?
What do we got? What's the fixture list here?
All right. Here, I'll read them off.
Yeah.
Dash Red Stars.
Okay.
Nope.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? I guess that could be interesting, but no. Reign Angel City, definitely not. The Courage and the Wave.
Maybe.
I don't think so.
Maybe, but probably not.
Louisville and the Current. Possibly
because of Louisville.
Gotham Bay, we won't do that because we've just covered. Yeah, we just did Bay. The Pride, the Spirit. Oh, tasty.
But man, we've done those teams a lot in the last few weeks.
Yeah, we have. I mean, they're the teams that everybody needs to know about.
Obviously, yeah.
And then the Thorns and the Utah Royals. No.
Wait, who's Chicago playing?
Chicago's playing
Houston.
The Dash.
They're playing Houston. I mean, maybe Portland, Utah. Not a lot of playoff.
I'm terrified of that.
I mean, not a lot of playoff implications.
I kind of think that Louisville and the Current, although we've covered the Current a ton.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I think maybe we're going to do a split weekend where we'll do 2 games with like
maybe
a
what we
less
do.
Focus.
Maybe what we do is we try and instead of talking about games as a whole, maybe we try and take 2 games where there are teams involved that really do have playoff stakes, and then just focus on what they're doing, and maybe kind of do a broader look. Like
we
can
just
today.
Talk the playoff picture.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I think specifically, like Louisville, KC could be interesting, and we just drill down on Louisville, and try and understand like why they've been so yo-yo in terms of like their playoff odds.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do the Louisville episode next week. I don't think,
and maybe a smattering of Portland, especially if Portland lose, and maybe I don't know, Louisville and San Diego win, and then Portland really does look like they might be in trouble.
We did just go off on Portland in free fall.
Sure.
And we've talked Portland a little bit, but yeah.
Keep that in the back pocket just in case.
I'll say this. If Portland loses to Utah, I think that's probably our episode. Okay. Of the weekend.
That I'm fine
and
with.
if not, I think if Portland loses to Utah, we'll split the episode up and we'll take a look at Louisville and Portland.
Okay, that works.
And if Portland doesn't lose to Utah, we'll just talk Louisville current and really drill down on who Louisville is and what they're looking at.
Another wild card.
I think
if Houston beats Chicago, maybe we talk a little bit about Chicago.
Yeah, sure. So what we're agreeing to commit to is absolutely nothing. and
yeah.
And we'll see. We're just going to talk about what the permutations of the playoff picture, focusing on one of the teams most affected by results this weekend. Could you be broader? No, you couldn't. I'm so sorry. Maybe we'll put this up to a poll. We'll figure it out. Evan, take us out.
Thanks so much for listening, everybody. Be sure to rate us 5 stars. Be sure to review us on if your podcast platform offers you the ability to do so. Follow us on whatever podcast tool you listen to us with. Tell all your friends about us, and email us at expectedowngoals@gmail.com. That's the letter expectedowngoals@gmail.com. And follow us on social media at xowngoals. That's the letter xowngoals, including Blue Sky. 4 games to go, guys. It's pretty crazy.
Whoop, whoop.
We will talk to you. If you are a Patreon subscriber, good for you. If you're not, only costs you $6 a month. You get 4 free bonus episodes every month, plus our semi-occasional YouTube live streams and access to our Discord server, which is a lot of fun to hang out in. So please consider signing up for Patreon for only $6 a month. And if you are a Patreon listener, we will talk to you on Thursday with our bonus episode. And if you are not, we will speak to you on Tuesday. Happy hunting this weekend at whatever NWSL venue you may find yourself in.
All right, talk soon.
Bye.